Hey everybody, welcome back to BFO, your new BFF. This is Sarah here.
Hello, it's John.
Hey everyone, it's Chris.
Hey guys, it's Eliza, and we have a really special treat for you guys for our final podcast episode of this series. We are joined by our very special guest, Dr. Ryan Riccucci, who you will have no doubt seen LinkedIn and Medium articles from most recently. Ryan, would you give our listeners a brief introduction, please?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So Ryan Riccucci, I'm a Border Patrol agent. My title is actually made up, but it's Senior Advisor, Law Enforcement Technology Integration, working at Customs and Border Protection Headquarters in Washington, D.C. And I've held positions all across the country in the Border Patrol at a CBP and DHS, working my way up from the field. They collected numerous, what I jokingly say, spike degrees and certifications, trying to improve the government's processes on how we acquire technology at scale to make our systems, missions, and data interoperable and useful to keep our agents, pilots, officers safe.
Ryan, based on that, how did you get into ontology?
The first time I actually heard the O word was in 2016, working with Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. And at that time, we were working on for Border Patrol headquarters. The chief of the Border Patrol wanted to upgrade how we do our intelligence process. What I mean by intelligence, it's the art and science of collecting information against bad guys and bad things to inform our operators, analysts, and decision makers how to target and prioritize our resources against the threat. And so during that, the folks at Johns Hopkins said you should look at ontology to help organize and make sense of data. And the project ended up with a strategic plan and a requirements document, and then leadership pivoted to something, and it never went anywhere. But a few years later, after I had finished my first doctorate in organizational leadership, studying how occasionally government employees and their contractors can blend strategic planning, systems engineering, enterprise architecture, program management, and other disciplines to deliver major technology acquisitions on time and under budget. Shortly after that, being detailed at the headquarters, I was part of a major acquisition, and we still sucked. And I thought I had learned all the things, and I was in a big meeting where I heard people, senior leaders that were negotiating how to spend $100 million, were talking past each other using the word requirements in different ways. And I realized that it was something about words, like what studies words? Like, why are the words we're using being misunderstood? And a different vendor at the time said, Ryan, you sound like our crazy ontology people. You should talk to them. So then in February of 2019, I got to meet with two senior ontologists, and they explained to me what classic ontology, philosophy of studying the nature of existence, had transformed into applied ontology with how do you model the world in a way that's computable and understandable to machines. And that was the life-changing day that set me on the path to learn this, study this, and then implement this to fill gaps in the federal government to improve our mission outcomes.
So you had said that when you had first kind of been exposed to ontology, the person who told you about it said, hey, you should go talk to our crazy ontologists. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that to some degree, you have to be able to describe ontology in a way to people who have never heard about it, that gets them excited about it. So when you, in your work, are trying to talk about ontology or describe ontology as a way to solve a problem, how do you get people excited about it?
That's a good question. And what's ironic about the discipline of ontology, to understand the nature of the universe precisely and immutably, it doesn't have a good way to explain itself. But this week, I'm actually at the Border Security Expo in Phoenix, which is like our Super Bowl of border security technology across the gamut of hardware, software, AI. And I got to test this out a number of times. And I think the one that I stuck with this week is when people ask or heard about ontology, I said, look, it's a way to be precise and understand the things in the real world we're trying to model and collect data on to solve problems. And this is an art and a science and a set of standards where you have words about things in the real world and their relationships that you can then make computable. So that's one version depending on the type of the person. My cheat code is, you know what? This is Google Translate for data. You're able to use ontology as a set of standards and a process and a discipline to model data and translate between different agencies, lexicons, or words, and make sense of the real world so people can keep their terms and we can stop arguing about definitions and get to understanding reality and use our machines to help augment our sense making across disparate data sets and different formats about the things in the real world we care about. I don't know if that's a good answer either. You ask 20 different people, 200 different people, you'll get probably 200 different variations of that. And I think that is appropriate. You have to curate your description of ontology based on your audience, and there's no one answer that'll satisfy everybody.
That's really interesting. It is kind of amusing that a discipline that's designed to kind of like describe reality and create consensus among it has different ways it can be defined by different audiences, which is kind of amusing in its own way. So when you first gotten dropped into ontology, do you have like a really good like early success story of applying it, using it?
After that first day, the way I broke it down, understanding BFO as 36 terms, is everything is an entity, and every entity is either an object or a process in time and space. And then those objects have qualities, roles, attributes, and so on. And then time and space, as something occurs on a site, a two-dimensional site in a three-dimensional space over time, I realized that I could then code anything and at least translate it into those using BFO as like the 36 generic terms, at a high level of abstraction. The first thing I wanted to use, or the first thing that I thought would be useful, is to address our issues with countering small unmanned aerial systems or drones, because it was shortly around 2021, after studying and learning about this for 2 years, I was the director of the Arizona Air Coordination Center, which is a Customs and Border Protection facility that coordinates all the air support for border security operations, including our fleet of helicopters, local sheriffs, police, 3 different military bases, a pretty congested airspace, and have to coordinate who's going to support who. And we had just started flying our own drones. And we didn't have a way to share where our friendly force drones were with pilots and aircraft. And so a pilot in a fast-moving jet or helicopter, a slow-flying drone is the equivalent of like having, a rock in the air that you might hit. So they were afraid, and we had to figure out a way for them to work collectively together, but pilots were afraid. So at the time, what we had to do was we had to assign 3 people to fly one drone. Not very efficient. You have the pilot that flies it, you have a spotter that's looking around out in the field to make sure they don't see or hear any planes, and you have to have a person sitting in front of a computer looking at a radar to be safe. And I said, well, how could we automate and make sense of this? And the existing systems couldn't do it. And that's when I lost my mind. I said, someone has to work on this. And that's where, going back to ontology, it's like, well, if we can organize and structure our data, we could use machine reasoning in combination with machine learning to do this. So I wrote it up and I took it to DHS Science and Technology that would support it. And they said, you know what, Ryan, we'll give you some seed money. And I was able to bring on one of those original ontologists that schooled me to this, one of Barry's students, one of Barry Smith's elite students, Dr. Bill Mandrick, who had a prior career as a colonel in an intelligence division. And we built a small working model of a counter-sUAS, counter-sUAS ontology, and was able to map it to what data, what systems, and what problems we could solve, that I took back to leadership, and then they gave us more funding for the next year to grow it. And then I went to Air and Marine and explained what we thought we could do, and they agreed to partner with us with Tucson. And coincidentally, I have a Border Patrol agent doing ontology work with Air and Marine as my #1 partner. And over time, we got some working models, and then threats and priorities shifted to fentanyl. So then we pivoted to fentanyl and said, okay, can we automate what analysts have to do? And so an analyst might have to take 20 hours to go into different data systems to pull out different pieces of information, clean it and curate it to answer a question like, what is the most common smuggling trend in commercial vehicles? So we were able to, in 90 days, go from that use case to a working ontology that showed, and software that showed how you could reduce that 20 hours into 45 seconds.
Wow, there's a lot to digest there, Ryan. And I'm still kind of digesting it right now as I'm speaking, I guess. But to push the conversation forward, I guess, where do you see ontologies in the next, and it's hard to predict the future, but if you had to, place your bets in the next maybe 5 years, like with all this great stuff that you guys are doing already and getting all this funding, and, you're able to really, really expand the footprint of applied ontology in your space. In the next 5 years, where do you see yourself and where do you see applied ontology? I guess in the circle that you're in.
I see productivity tools that'll basically be teams of agentic AI agents. What I mean is AI agents that have some autonomy to do complex tasks, working as teams to create ontologies in hours or minutes that used to take teams of humans days, weeks, or months. And I see that ontology becomes democratized because you don't even have to be an ontologist anymore. You need maybe one to check the software and make sure it works, but you will have the ability to ontologize anything that is useful in near real time to produce the knowledge graph of the things in the real world that are connected in their relationships that you want to answer questions about to achieve some type of business or mission impact for border security or maybe even our personal lives. Because now you can have the ability to maybe I want to create my own, ontology of like vacation planning. And I wouldn't even have to say the O word because you may not even have to know about it. All you need to know is, hey, Coochie Bot or hey Siri, I want to plan a vacation and these are all the things I care about. And it will say, okay, it'll go out and map it'll import all the classes from BFO, CCO, produce the classes it cares about, inject your requirements, scrape the web to map the data to your ontology, and you'll get a list of the best vacation options that match all your requirements that you would have paid, $800 to a travel agent and months planning that you would now do in probably all of 2 minutes.
That's huge. I guess my next point is in this sort of future, where do you see the ontologist?
Different opinions on this proliferation and democratization of AI. Now you have, AI at your fingertips, and if you understand how to use it, maybe the whole knowledge capital economy completely changes. You no longer need lawyers, doctors, or engineers for basic consultation things. Like how many doctor's appointments are virtual appointments? I mean, there'll always be a human in the loop, though. I think at the beginning to understand and help frame the problem, and at the end to understand and make sure that nothing missing or hidden in the answers you're getting. So I think the ontologist comes in at the beginning and end of the actual software development and the quality assurance. And one of the issues that we have been worried about in the community is there's not a training pipeline to train all the ontologists we would need to do this at enterprise scale across not just the government agencies, but all the government agencies in all the world. Now I think that problem is going to be solved, and with I think the current queuing of people going through these programs would be enough now to support all the ontology work that would be needed for probably the next 20 years with these tools. So they're still important, but now I don't think that there won't be scarcity won't be a problem because now truly Barry likes to say a little ontology goes a long way. One ontologist will be able to go a long way.
Ryan, you mentioned a little bit about basic formal ontology and how its classes encompass everything that exists in the world. Can you talk a little bit more about basic formal ontology as a top level ontology?
Sure. Your top level ontology is your North Star. Back in the seafaring days, they would navigate by the stars. So having a top level ontology is your root of all your classes that every other ontology will derive from. Having that top level ontology means as you get more and more specific, top level ontology, 36 terms to code the world, that's pretty sparse and pretty flexible. But there are very detailed and specific topics where you may want to model the DNA of, I think the zebrafish example is what Barry likes, and know the relationship between zebrafish DNA and maybe extracting some type of drug that would cure cancer someday. Now, that's a big leap from a top level ontology to probably layers of hundreds or maybe thousands of classes you have to get to. But any ontology that is conformant and written to the rules and quality of BFO will be automatically interoperable if you need it to be. Why BFO is the best is because it's a realist ontology, and you can model, I say, everything in reality. I know that there's some debate about the limitations to model physics or maybe aspects of quantum science. I disagree.
We know that BFO has been recognized as an ISO IEC standard because of that ability to model everything. One of the other benefits of BFO is the community that comes along with it. You name dropped Bill Mandrick, and our listeners would be able to find plenty of papers authored by or co-authored by Bill Mandrick. How has the BFO community benefited your exploration of using ontology and helped you grow in it?
Well, first of all, being able to reuse existing work and only have to build the pieces that are missing is massively valuable. I mean, no one joins the Border Patrol because they want to be a professional ontologist, but it makes sense to many of us with the way we think about the nature of the universe and make connections between bad guys' behavior, pattern, footprints, evidence, and the relationships between them. So having so much work that has been vetted of quality in BFO conformant ontologies means 90% of what I needed or more was already there. And then when I give back to that community, it's this snowball, this aggregating effect that the longer we do this, the more work that is shared, you're constantly getting better. Like this is almost, this is a self-improving system that's crowdsourced. And now with the tooling, we have capability that I never would have thought possible years ago. We might be able to ontologize the universe, which means we'll be able to use our technology and tools to gain a richer, deeper understanding of what's going on around us to solve our problems, improve our quality of life, to protect the country, to discover new drugs, and so on. So I think it's a really exciting time from that aspect of it. And without the BFO community that's been contributing to this for over 20 years and all the agencies that have contributed, billions in research, why would you not continue and leverage all this tremendous work with how much value it has?
So given that really the strength and power of ontologies, and BFO in particular, is that it's open source, anybody can access it, anybody can add things to it, and it's this continually self-improving model. Are there certain environments you think that are traditionally more closed that ontology just would not be as effective in? Because like I work in corporate training, for example, and they don't like to share their processes, their models, their ways of doing things with anybody but themselves because they're trying to generate profit off of it. So do you think in that kind of environment, the power of ontology would not be as strong as it would be in a more open source kind of free environment?
That's a fair question, and both aspects can be supported. So I'm not in corporate training, but I bet I could give it a pretty good approximation of what you are trying to do and what the company's trying to accomplish and how they make profit and how they organize and standardize certain training and delivery. And this is common. I'll pivot for a second. In the intelligence world where things are classified, you don't share your classified tradecraft, but all the training or education behind it is open. So you can make all the ontologies open source about things that are generic or moderately abstract and knowable. And then your proprietary or your secret sauce on how you apply it, we call that the application level ontology, that can be yours, that can be obscured. But the generic classes about training and programs and KPIs or terminal learning objectives or learning outcomes or your approach, modality, pedagogy, andragogy, whatever, those aren't secret. So you can have generic ontologies that are shared across the training community, make training even more consistent, standard, interoperable, and the competitive advantage is how you apply it, which you hide. So I think there's plenty of room for both. And any company that didn't see that might end up running themselves or limiting themselves to future profit models because they're not leveraging open source. It's kind of like the Apple ecosystem or the Microsoft ecosystem. There's tons of third-party plug-and-play providers that make lots of money. Now, they hide their specific plug-and-play capability, but they're using the back-end Apple ecosystem or Microsoft architecture. Ontologists is another version of that you can plug into and still have your own competitive advantage for how you use it.
So on that note, since we're talking about competitive advantages, in like 5 to 10 years, say that we've got a really robust ontology practice. How do you think that would make us more competitive in the global community? What would a robust ontology allow us to do now globally that we aren't doing now?
I think there's three different outcomes, two of them aren't great that could possibly happen. I think that the maturation of ontology will fill a gap in artificial intelligence that is overwhelmingly emphasized machine learning over the last since 1959 to machine reasoning. The first country or industry that'll be in the next 10 years that figures out how to combine both of them will have such a powerful form of AI that it will not be open and democratized. You'll now have the like infinite capability to create hundreds or thousands of PhDs in any subject working concurrently to solve any problem at an order of magnitude with the computing power coming to solve any problem. Whoever has that, why would you share it? You're going to be renting intelligence. So one dystopian future is the knowledge capital economy collapses, and there's all but the most unique positions leveraging critical and creative thinking that only humans can do, and will still have jobs. And then what do you do with the rest of everybody? That's a problem that I think governments are working on right now to figure out like what is the most humane way and safe way to deal with this potentiality. The second outcome is you have an altruistic outcome where maybe it is, the United States or some benevolent company that wants to share this. And now you can create systems to optimize everything from our energy use to healthcare. Everything's optimized, which means humans no longer need to work nearly as much as they do, and you get time and productivity back. But if that was to occur, capitalism is no longer going to be the suitable economic model, because now this technology could change the what humans even need to do or produce to meet their needs to feed, clothe, shelter themselves. That's the utopian state. And the third is somewhere in the middle, where they're the tools are available, but not the best version. The best versions are kept and safeguarded tightly by governments. And just like nuclear weapons 50 years ago, the big, great global powers will each have their nuclear AI, and there'll be a détente where they agree not to use it against each other. And we have some semblance of a future where AI is embedded into everything, and we get a little better, quality of life goes up, but the full power and use of it to improve humanity and reduce pain and suffering doesn't occur at scale because capitalism still drives profits. So that's my view of the potential world in the next 10 years.
I have waited every episode for someone to talk about AI dystopia, and Ryan, you finally brought it in, so thank you so much. I've waited so long. We got it.
Well, this literally keeps me up at night. I've been trying to seek alternative sources that are credible, looking at legitimately, like, what are all the ways this goes wrong, and how can we start preparing for this now?
Okay, quick now. Somebody ask a upbeat question, because we just had AI dystopia world, so we need...
Here's just got one.
I'm happy here.
Yeah, I think I got one. Well, so Ryan, I'm sure you heard that UB has officially launched the Applied Ontology Masters and Applied Ontology PhD. So we're starting to see some movement in terms of education in the US for applied ontology. What do you think would be, I mean, obviously this is great news and it's going to push the field forward, but what, like in your world, if you had all the money and all the power, how many like degrees would you want out there? How many people would you want fully trained that are just available? Like how many people would you need or want in the world, I guess, or in the US at least, to be fully trained in applied ontology?
That's an interesting question. And I won't go through a whole like Fermi estimation exercise here. I would say any company or agency or group that wants to be interoperable and share value across different missions or systems needs access to the capability. That means they may not need an ontologist. Maybe they need access to an agentic AI ontologist. That's like saying, how many doctors do you need? Well, enough to keep everybody healthy. How many police do you need? Enough to keep everybody safe. So I can't give you a number, but I think that, the number I would have given, 2 years ago would have been like, I think we probably need hundreds. We need to get hundreds at the journeyman level, and at least a few dozen or more at the master's level. Maybe I'd flip that, hundreds as the senior experts, and then thousands at the journeyman level for all the different agencies and industries that would benefit from it. Now, with the breakthroughs in agentic AI and blending machine learning and machine reasoning, now it's probably a fraction of that.
Sounds like I'm making the cut, but barely.
Well, I think if I was going to, maybe I could, I'll reframe that question a little bit. What about how many people that are both ontologists and technologists that understand how to use this technology continue to advance it? So that's maybe a more interesting question. How many ontologists would I need that understand deeply and are technical to code and design the next AI systems?
And I'll just go ahead and go with my final question right now, just because we are closing in on the hour here. But if you had to change anything that Barry or John Beverly have done in the last 5 to 10 years, I guess, in the applied ontology space, is there anything you would change? Like, yeah, they could have done that a little better.
You can always do better and you can always improve. I would double down on my last answer and say, bring in more of the interdisciplinary approach sooner. And Dr. Beverly's done phenomenal with the cadre of students that he's found, recruited, and his outreach into other departments to cross pollinate from data scientists and some of the other school of engineering and so on. So maybe that, maybe there needs to be more of a showdown, and where I think John and Barry are very open and engaging with some of the other ontology groups, but I don't know that that's really what's best for the overall national security mission and border security mission, where we're tolerating things that are taking time and energy from groups that are just writing papers about their version of ontology that is absolutely unusable and useless to me, and maybe even dangerous because other people that don't know what they're doing might read this and think that it's actually legitimate when it's essentially, to me, a paper mill. And being only, 1 foot in the academic side and 1 foot in operations, I don't know that I'm credible enough to maybe make that case. And maybe this is the wrong approach because it's not being utopian academic. Everybody gets their opinion. No, things are getting serious. We are definitely going to be going to war using AI, and I don't have time for document mills and academicians just writing papers on what they think. I want proof. I want scientific method. I want results. And you're either on that or you're not. And if you're not, stop. You don't get any attention. No, you're not invited to the party. Like, I feel like there is a time coming where we should be a little bit more assertive that this is no longer an academic exercise. There are serious stakes beyond whether you think your approach is better and here's your paper. What problems have you solved? Show me in the real world how it's applied and show me the proof.
And we have now lost 3/4 of the academic audience paying attention to the podcast. I'm just teasing.
Good. I mean, if we lost, that means you probably didn't matter and you're not relevant. And you know what? You're not going to be needed anyway because I'm going to make an agentic model that replaces you.
Ryan, all of our guests have received a question from our BFO godfather, Dr. Barry Smith. And your question for our episode from the Godfather is, do you believe that Robocops could replace Border Patrol agents?
No, a robot could never replace a human. It can augment it, or it can replace certain useful features of a human. So you can have robots on an assembly line. Do they replace a human, or do they replace an aspect of things that humans were doing so humans can be more useful? But the answer is no. They'll never replace us, but it can augment what we do to free us up to do things that only humans can do, which is split-second judgment of multiple factors at once.
Ryan, thank you so much for being our special guest here on BFO, your new BFF. Remember, everybody, check the links in the liner notes. We will show you where to find more about Ryan and everything else that you've heard about today. And we hope to see you soon.
Great. Thanks for having me. Thanks all.
Remember, everybody, check the links in the cliff notes now.